Welcome to Views from the World Tree. On today's episode, we get ready to journey over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. But if the horse doesn't know the way or can't pull the sleigh, what happens then? If you want to increase your odds of survival for everything from car trouble to backcountry skiing accidents, this episode is for you. And now, on with the show.
Nice. Personal news this week. Kind of random and off the wall, but my wife and I had squirrel stew last night for dinner. So I've talked before about, I have a couple of dogs and I have a backyard with some trees. Well, the dogs happened to tree a squirrel the other night. And where I live, it's currently hunting season for red squirrels. So I was like, why not? We'll introduce the wife to some wild game and, see if I'm still as good as a shot as I thought I was. So took the squirrel cleanly and humanely with a single shot with a pellet gun and cleaned it, cooked it up. The pelt is currently stretched and drying in the garage. The stew was actually delicious. So if you've never tasted squirrel, it's kind of like, they say everything tastes like chicken. I would say squirrel tastes more like turkey, but it's got a sweetness to it. So kind of like a sweet turkey, I guess. But it was good.
I have to say, when you sent me the picture of your squirrel steaks and said that your dogs treat a squirrel and you went, why not? My first thought was, man, what kind of Appalachian backwoods life is my cousin living? Oh, man.
Yeah, I think my wife had the same thought.
That's not something that you normally hear. Like, oh, squirrel season, I'm going to shoot a squirrel and eat it.
Well, and to be honest, it wasn't the plan. My yard is bordered on two sides by farmland. So, but when I'm out there in the evenings with the dogs, I usually have the pellet gun because we have a huge starling problem, and they're actually considered a nuisance species here in Idaho. So you can shoot starlings year round, and with any legal weapon. So I usually have one out there just to scare the starlings off, because there's lots of other birds in the area that we actually like to look at and like to watch. So that's why it was out there. And they just happened to tree the squirrels. So yeah, but
it still cracks me up.
It was, I don't want to go into gory details. I was pretty proud of myself. It was pretty impressive. A shot with a pellet gun. I was probably about 15, 20 yards and just right through the neck, broke the spine. No suffering at all. It was textbook.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you tried it, and I'm glad that the stew was good. So you said it tastes a little bit more like turkey. Is that just because it's a greasier meat, or?
Yeah, supposedly everything tastes like chicken, right? But it's obviously it's not poultry. It's red meat. So it's a little bit greasier than chicken. So pretty close to turkey as far as consistency, but yeah, like oddly sweet. So it's really reminiscent of rabbit. I've had quite a few rabbits in my younger days, and it's like, if I had to pick one animal that it was most similar to, I would say rabbit, but most people haven't had rabbit. So sweet turkey.
I have to admit, rabbit might be one of my favorite meats. And before you start emailing us and going, "Oh, you barbarians, how dare you eat cute little Bugs Bunny, blah, blah, blah." There's a reason Elmer Fudd was hunting rabbits. Like, it's a good meat.
Yeah. Yeah. And those things they can become a problem pretty quick too.
Oh, yeah.
All they do is eat and breed.
Where I used to live, the city cleared out the coyote pack because the coyotes were eating people's dogs. And as soon as the coyotes were removed, the rabbits became a nuisance species and a really bad nuisance species. We've got some fields that were closed down for plague watch, basically.
Yeah, they're cute and cuddly, but man, they can have an environmental impact like you would not believe.
Yep.
Anyway.
I guess, well, we're on the food of, or on the topic of food. On the food of topic, no. On the topic of food, my personal news, my wife and I went and bought a Traeger over the weekend.
Nice.
Yeah. I've never had such a fancy barbecue machine before. I have to admit, I kind of enjoyed it. The second night we had it, so we seasoned it the first night. The second night we had it, I made sirloin steaks on it, and I smoked those. So I did low and slow on those. And then I want to say Tuesday of last week, or this week, however you want to say it, I did some bacon on it, and we made BLTs with pecan smoked bacon.
Ooh, that does sound good.
And that was delicious. So
I love my Traeger. We use it quite a bit. They're nifty little machines. And they weren't the first to come up with the whole electric wood pellet grill idea, but they definitely popularized it.
I feel one of my friends has a Pitmaster, which is the electric one. And I feel like it's a dirtier smoke than Traeger. I feel like Traeger's got a really good design or does something where it just tastes cleaner.
Yeah, I haven't tried the Pitmaster, but I don't know. We got ours because it was a local company at the time from where we used to live. So that kind of helped us decide on that brand, but we've been really happy with it. And I really like their app that, it's got like recipes and all kinds of stuff in it.
Oh, yeah. Their app is incredible. We got one of the newer models that has the Wi-Fi enabled.
Ooh. Bougie.
So I put the meat on, put the temperature probe in, and plugged that into the thing. And then from my phone, I went upstairs and I was playing some video games, and my phone was telling me, "Oh, currently your grill's running at 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and your meat's sitting at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit." So I was able to kind of guesstimate when it would hit that 145.
Nice.
So
pretty fancy.
It was cool. Definitely worth it to get the Wi-Fi enabled one.
Yeah.
So, and then outside of Traeger, I've got a new guilty pleasure.
Oh.
It's not dirty. Don't worry. I have started watching fishing videos on YouTube. There's this weird subculture of YouTube where people put GoPros on their chest and just go out and fish and fish and fish and show off the best catches of the day type of thing. And it's almost like ASMR, like just listening to some guy or girl chat as they fish. but it's, I don't know. I can't explain why, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah, there's a couple channels I follow that's their format. It's very relaxing, I guess, and I guess let you live vicariously through them when you're not able to get out yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we have bass fishing in Colorado, but we don't have as many warm water lakes as Texas does, and a lot of the channels that I started following are based out of Texas, where they have these giant lakes and like 7-8 pound largemouth bass that they can just pull up. It looks fun.
Yeah, there's bass fishing in Idaho. I haven't been yet, and when I was living in Utah, bass fishing was a good 2.5 hour drive at least. So from where I
Yeah, where
lived.
you grew up, it was more trout, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yep, trout, all the cold water stuff, high mountain lakes.
Which, let's be honest, I would much rather eat a trout.
Oh yeah, for
But
sure.
as far as sport fishing, like bass is still king. Those things fight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
there's my goofy personal news. Bought a Traeger and I'm watching fishing YouTube.
You just turning into a regular old country boy.
I guess in the middle of the city where like 8 of my neighbors can see into my backyard.
Yes, I see. Good news, everyone.
So current events would be next. I was perusing and came across a headline that I mean, I could have swore this was clickbait, but it was on businessinsider.com, which, you know, a little bit more reputable than like BuzzFeed, but from what I read, it's actually pretty interesting. Apparently, Germany, home to like Volkswagen, Audi, Mercedes, and the Autobahn, the Nürburgring, huge powerhouse in the automotive industry, has announced they're planning to phase out the sale of combustion engine vehicles. They have a goal to get 15 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030. And to help meet that, they are phasing out the sale of internal combustion powered cars. And the way that they're doing this is phasing it out over the next few years. This is both gasoline or petrol, like they call it over there, and diesel. So if it burns dinosaur juice, they're phasing it out. And it's not just German-made cars, which I thought was interesting. By the year 2028, it will be illegal to register any new production vehicle in Germany, whether that's German-made or French, or whether you put it on a barge and take it over from the U.S. You will not be able to register anything that was made after 2028 in Germany if it has an internal combustion engine.
That's crazy. I wonder if that'll extend to their Formula One teams.
Yeah, I don't know. It says the fact that they're doing it through registration makes me think it only applies to street legal vehicles. But yeah, it's just interesting to me, this, because Germany has always been kind of a central figure, and driving innovation in horsepower and things like that. Right? They're kind of seen as one of the premier sources of Das Auto. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes, if it changes.
Yeah, I mean, outside of America, they have the second oldest motor vehicle company. I think. Or is GMC older than BMW?
I don't remember. I know that they had, I think it's Volkswagen is the parent company that owns a lot of other car brands. So,
Yeah,
I mean, things like that change hands so often, right? I mean, Ford used to own Jaguar and Land Rover, and I don't think they do anymore. I think those were purchased by Volkswagen or Fiat, maybe Fiat Chrysler. They change hands so often. And now that Top Gear's off the air, I don't have their their news every week to update me.
And Top Gear's hard because they'd say that the Fords are German engineered when the Fords that we buy here in the States are Mexican engineered. Like it's not the same car that we get here that they get over there.
Right.
Too. So I don't know.
Anyway, that was my current event for the week.
I like it. Kind of goes along with mine. I don't have the sources, but this week I decided before work that I was going to wake up and watch the news. And every day in the news, it's made national news at this point. Colorado, the Denver, like the Front Range Denver area of Colorado, has only received 1.8 inches of precipitation since April.
Since April, wow.
Yep. And this is definitely the driest that I have ever seen. Today it was almost 80 degrees. It's December, and it was almost 80 degrees.
I think our high was about, I think we were low 50s, which is still uncharacteristically warm for as far north as I am. But that's really weird for Denver because you guys are pretty high up in altitude. You're twice what we are here.
Well, we do have that mountain, the microclimate, where we're on the leeward side of the Rocky Mountains, and so we don't get the snow that the mountains get. But the thing is, the mountains aren't getting snow either. I was on Instagram looking at reels, and there was a professional snowboarder that was up at Beaver Creek getting ready for the World Cup event that Colorado hosts. And outside of the man-made run, it's brown grass and like no snow outside of the ski run proper.
I wonder how much of that is artificial snow that they've had to, or whatever they call it, manufactured snow. I don't know.
Oh, it's all manufactured. I don't think I could pull it up if I wanted to, but I don't want to dwell on it too much. But I don't think I know Aspen hasn't gotten any snow yet this year. I think Telluride's gotten a little bit, but the areas around Vail Mountain have gotten hardly any snow. It's almost like, I know you're not a big skier, at least I don't remember you being a big skier, but about 3 years, Lake Tahoe had a season where there was no snow, and people were ticked because that's supposed to be some of the best skiing that's accessible to California, right? So,
well, and I know people will, the big skiers will spring for their season passes in advance. So I can understand the frustration. But I mean, Colorado, that's got to be a big potential economic hit too, because skiing's pretty big over there.
yeah.
So
We'll have to see. I I don't want to be doom and gloom and say, oh, it's climate change. You see, it's climate change. But I also know the La Nina weather pattern. We kind of talked about this a while ago.
Yeah.
Brings a drier, more mild winter to places like Colorado, Utah, that type of thing. So I don't know what's what, but this is one of the driest winters that I've ever experienced. I know we're not in winter proper yet, and it just scares me for next year's fire season.
Yeah, no kidding. It will be interesting to see how it turns out. And by interesting, I mean, get ready because it's going to be bad.
Yeah, you know it's going to be bad when you have news agencies telling you, giving you tips on how to water your trees' roots so that they don't die this winter.
Yeah.
Because normally there's a little bit of a trickle of snow melt that's getting down to them during this dormancy phase, and they have nothing.
It has been so weird. Sorry, I don't want to dwell on this too long. This is probably going to be a longer episode, but
yeah, that's all right.
So moving from the Utah desert to what is pretty much the Pacific Northwest. You know, if you live in Oregon and Washington, I know you guys don't claim us over here, but I mean, come on. I'm literally a 10-minute drive from Oregon. It's been such a weird thing for me to see. So I go out on my back lawn, and if I walk around to the north side of my house, there is moss growing in my lawn because my lawn has not dried out for 3 months. It's bizarre to me. And like I have a cedar fence around my property. It's growing moss. Like I know a lot of our listeners, they're going to be like, well, yeah, moss grows on wood fences. For me, I've never seen that other than, time that I've spent back east and in other parts of the world. Growing up in the Utah desert, moss is not a thing.
We don't really get that here either.
Yeah, it's been so weird. So
we get it when we go up into the mountains because I think there's enough snow that kind of sticks around that gives it a chance to get enough moisture into the bark. But no, that's not a normalcy here either.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. And I mean, we haven't really had rain for several weeks now, but every morning we'll go out and it's just this pea soup of fog. And you can just, as the day goes out, it like settles on everything, every surface. You go out to start your car in the morning and it's like actually drizzling down off of the roof of your car because there's just so much moisture in the air. So anyway, sorry, just a little bit of a tangent.
No, that actually sounds awesome. Sorry, I don't know if you could pick that up. My wife was laughing at
No, I didn't hear it.
At a movie downstairs. We've got really good acoustics in our new house, I gotta tell you.
Nice.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh no, it sounds beautiful. It sounds wonderful until you get those below freezing temperatures, and that all that fog turns into that super thin, glassy ice.
Oh yeah,
that's just a pain in the butt to scrape off.
Yeah, luckily, I love my wife enough that she got spoiled when we got her car, and it's got remote start and all that stuff. So
there you
it doesn't affect her at all.
You win on that one for sure.
But anyway, speaking of cold weather, maybe we should move on.
Yeah, this might be like one of the saddest transitions into how to survive a non-existent winter.
Yeah.
I kid because I know for our listeners in Northern Europe and Northern Asia that there is a winter. Don't worry, we'll give you some tips too.
Yeah. So we kind of have some haphazard notes. We just wanted to go through and, survival in general is something that I don't want to come off as self-righteous or whatever, but I feel like I have some knowledge in that area. And winter survival in particular can be kind of tricky. And with changing weather patterns and, weird El Nino, La Nina, whatever, it's possible that some areas that don't usually get snow are going to get snow. And so it's something to be prepared for. So I guess we can just kind of jump right into it here. So when you take any type of survival training, one of the first things that they teach is the rule of threes. And it's just a way in a survival situation when you're high stress and you're not thinking clearly. If you remember this, it will help you keep your priorities straight. And so the rule of threes says that you can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. And so as you go down that list, each one, assumes that the one above it has been taken care of. So you can't survive 3 hours without shelter, but if you are drowning, then you're not going to make it 3 hours. You're going to make it the 3 minutes. So,
right. And shelter doesn't necessarily have to mean you're building a full log cabin out in the middle of nowhere. It could be as simple as a pine tree that breaks the wind.
Yeah.
So it's not a shelter to the extent that we're used to living in the lap of luxury that we are. I just wanted to clarify that because some people will go, well, shelter. I saw on Survivor that they went 3 nights without shelter or whatever. Yes, they did, but they still had something to keep the elements off of them while they slept. Usually they had elevation on the platform that they slept, and they had usually had figured out fire at that point too. And Survivor staged. Sorry to burst anybody's bubble.
Yeah. And that 3 hours is more for like extreme conditions, extreme heat or extreme cold. So, but in general, yeah, 3 hours of extreme exposure is about all you can take. So could even be like shelter could be considered a coat and boots and a hat, right?
Right.
So anyway, so that's the rule of threes. And like I say, in a survival situation, having been in out in the wilderness in extreme conditions, you're not always thinking clearly. And so if you just memorize that and try to keep it in mind, then it'll help you keep your priorities straight. You don't want to go searching for food, if you are up in the mountains in the winter and it's going to get below freezing at night. You need to make sure that you've got your shelter in place, worry about food in a couple days. So that is one thing that I know, unfortunately claims a lot of people's lives when they're lost in the wilderness. They, we as humans are used to eating pretty regularly. And so people tend to laser focus in on that. And, they will go foraging for food and die of frostbite when, they could have survived 3 weeks before they really needed food.
In regards to that, I know it's later on in our show notes, but water's so much more important than food.
Yeah.
And just because it's cold and just because the relative humidity may be a little bit higher than you normally are, walking through snow takes twice as much energy as not walking through snow, right?
Oh, at least.
And the chances of dehydration go up exponentially in the winter. When I was in Boy Scouts, we had the winter camping, like a high adventure camp, and I remember getting so dehydrated that I had actually lost bearing on where I was and what I was doing, and it's scary. I mean, that's just after a day of walking a sled through waist deep snow. It's a scary situation, and it's something that a lot of people forget, that you can become dehydrated in the winter. Very easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Almost easier than in the summer just because it sneaks up on you. You don't notice it. Winter air is a lot drier than you would think. And then also, you usually bundle up, and so you're not going to notice that you're sweating out all of your water because your coat's going to soak it up.
Mm-hmm. And the purpose of sweat is to cool you down. So if you're hot, still bundled up in your coat, your body's going to produce even more sweat to try to cool you down because it's not getting that feedback that it's used to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, yeah, we don't have a structure here. We jump around and talk about it in the way that it makes sense to us.
And now you get to experience the little bit of ADD that I have as I jump all over the list and try to stay on topic to an extent. I guess the next thing is what to keep in your car. And I've had different experiences than you, so I can kind of go through my list, and then maybe you can shed light on what you've been told or what you've learned.
Yeah, go for it.
When it comes to traveling in the mountains, especially here in Colorado, the things that you should keep in your car, I was always taught a space blanket, a wool blanket, a candle, a road flare, some food, some water, and some kitty litter. And
just
I don't know.
In case you really have to pee.
That's right. For the absorbent factors. We can go over what each of those are used for, but were you taught anything on top of that, or?
I mean, that's pretty basic. Yeah, I drive a truck, so I usually keep a few more things. I like to keep like a shovel and tire chains, but I also keep recovery gear in there so that I can pull people out when they get stuck. So, but I think your list is a good basic list that regardless of the vehicle that you have, it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Something to drink, something to eat, something to stay warm.
So let's go back to the kitty litter. What's it really used for?
For traction.
Right. There's nothing worse than skidding out, ending up in a ditch, and not being able to get out. The kitty litter can actually help you if your car's not too deep into a ditch, or if you're spinning out on ice, you can throw it underneath your tires and gain a little bit of traction to get past the ice patch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's really used for.
Yeah. Speaking of spinning out, there's a few things. So you and I, growing up in places that get a lot of snow, are very accustomed to driving in the snow. If you live in a warmer climate and you happen to be fortunate enough to get some snow this year, you may not be as familiar with it. So just a few things about driving in snow that I have found helpful. And one is depending on where you live and the tires that are on your car, it may be a good idea to swap out your tires for winter tires. And also, it's important to note that there's a difference between a winter tire and a studded snow tire. So most people have seen the studded snow tires that have little metal, like spikes almost. Those are great if they're legal in your area, but also just winter tires in general are made of a different type of rubber that can still offer a lot better grip in the snow and in the ice, and even just in cold temperatures. As the ambient temperature goes down, the rubber in your tire is going to change. It's going to be a lot more stiff, and if your car has summer tires on it, it's not going to do well in the cold, whether there's snow on the road or not. And in the place where I live, most people have all season tires, which is kind of a good compromise between the two. And then just a couple other things really quick, and then I'll toss it back to you. So the number one thing when you're driving in the snow, slow the down. Like, seriously, you cannot drive the same speed that you can on dry roads or on warm roads. So slow down, keep more distance between you and the car in front of you. And when you're coming up to an intersection or a stop sign, you need to start braking early and gently. So
Automatic ABS, the automatic braking system, does wonders, but it still won't work if you're sliding.
makes a great foot massager in the winter.
Yeah. I've had a few instances where I had one of those oh crap moments, and you'd slam on the brakes and you can feel the car lurch
Mm-hmm.
as it tries to fan out the brake.
Yeah. How about you? Any other snow driving tips, or want to move on?
The big one that I have: bad blizzard, bad snow, avalanche, something where your car is stuck in the snow. Don't rely on your car's engine and heater to keep you warm. Carbon monoxide poisoning is a real thing.
That's a good point.
And cracking your window and using the candle that you should have in your winter kit as a warmth place and bundling up in blankets is actually going to keep you alive longer than dying from carbon monoxide poisoning, because so that's kind of my last tip on winter driving. Just if you get stranded, be prepared to keep yourself warm in a way that's counterintuitive to what you may be used to.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Let's see, looking through the notes, what about what to put in your backpack when you're cross-country skiing or hiking or snowshoeing? Anything in particular that you put in your day pack for snow adventures?
It comes back to the same like categories, I guess, right? You want to have either water, or because water is heavy, some way to purify water. So I keep it's like a life straw, but it's smaller and it treats a larger volume of water over its lifetime. It's made by Sawyer.
So I'm going to stop you. I saw in the notes you said life straw. This is something that I've never seen. What is that?
So a life straw is the popular one. It was developed, I don't remember who, sorry, but it was developed for areas in the world that don't have clean drinking water. And it's a plastic straw, but it's about, an inch thick and 8 to 10 inches long. And you just stick it into the dirty water, put the other end in your mouth, and suck the water through, and it filters everything out.
So is bacteria, it like a charcoal filter built into the straw, or?
Yeah, kind of like on steroids.
Okay.
Yeah, it works off of the suction, and I mean it can filter out like bacteria, feces, dirt. The only thing it can't filter out is some chemicals. So it's it's a microscopic porous filter basically. So it doesn't chemically treat the water; it just filters it.
Cool. Sorry to stop you. I was just curious because I hadn't heard of that before.
No, a lot of people maybe have not, so it was good. But there's another company that's less well known called Sawyer, and they make one that's a lot more compact, and it can actually treat more water before it's worn out and you have to throw it away. So I keep one of those, and I've actually used it hiking quite a bit because you encounter like streams and stuff when you're out hiking, and so you can just you can either collect the water in a bottle and then use the little straw to drink it over time, or you can filter it all at once, whatever you want to do. And then I try to keep some like high calorie snacks, so like nuts and things like that. Extra pair of socks, because your socks always get wet, either from snow or from sweating.
Mm-hmm.
Wool socks. I like the Darn Tough brand wool socks. And other than that, just kind of basic stuff. What about, so I know a lot of people will be going skiing this season. Well, hopefully. And I don't really ski. Is there anything that you make sure to take with you when you go?
I have a confession. A Colorado confession. I have never been downhill skiing.
Oh.
I've been cross-country or Nordic skiing quite a bit. And the people that I tend to go cross-country skiing with, we don't really go deep into the backcountry. So we actually stay on groomed trails within city limits. So
okay.
I will say the couple times that I've gone snowshoeing, which is great if you are not a skier and just love being outside, especially in the winter. There is something magical about being outside. Snow kind of muffles the sound, and you kind of feel like you're by yourself when you're out there. Mm-hmm. Similar to the car, I always bring a candle with me, and it may sound weird, like, does this guy just like burning candles or something? But things are wet out in the winter, right?
Yeah.
And a candle, a wax-based candle with a long burn, you can use it to heat up a cup of water. If you run out of water, you can scoop some snow into a tin cup. Also in my pack, tin cup. Use the candle to melt the snow. Not going to be as safe as your Life Straw or your Sawyer, but it's still something that you can do. On that topic, don't just eat the snow. It'll actually dehydrate you. Little known fact. But snow is more air than actual water.
It's true.
And so you don't get enough out of it, even if you feel like you're getting enough. So definitely scoop some up and use the candle if you're in a dire situation. Compass, cell phone. Most places have a cell phone tower now. And I bring a compass because just in case you don't have a cell phone tower, the compass on your phone won't work without a cell phone tower. So, yeah. So I would just add the candle, tin cup, cell phone, and a compass.
Yeah. As you've been going through those additional items, I've kind of been mentally going through what I keep in my bag. I actually have a bag that's always packed. It's sitting right over there, 10 feet away. So it's hard for me to remember what to pack because I haven't had to change what's in it for a while. But your comment about the candle reminds me, keep, a way to start a fire, which I have in there, and tinder. So I keep a vacuum sealed bag of dryer lint to use, because it is it weighs nothing, takes up no space, is extremely flammable. And then I have a couple different ways to start a fire. I have like one of the little ferro rod things, but I also just have a lighter, and some matches, some waterproof matches. One thing that I carry that I don't know a lot of people that do is like hard maps, like paper maps, non-digital hard copy maps. I have topographical maps of, anywhere that I would find myself, like the entire state where I used to live and live now, and neighboring states. Just because a lot of times, maybe your phone is out of battery, or if you are in an area without cell service, you need to be able to find your way out. So, and then a compass, like you said. And then the only other thing I can think of would be a first aid kit, but I think we have that as a separate bullet item.
Yeah.
And then I always have a little handheld ham radio because I have my ham radio license. So that's, yeah. I think that's everything that I can think of right now.
There you go. Speaking on the paper maps, a lot of people don't know where to find them, but I was impressed. I was at a local sporting goods store, a ranch and home sporting goods store, and they had a kiosk where you could find, using the old geographic survey markers, you could find any 5x5 square mile area detailed topographical map for anywhere in the state that you live in that you want to go.
Nice.
And it's really helpful if you know how to use them.
Yes, especially topo maps.
I was lucky enough to grow up in scouting, and I was lucky enough to kind of learn orienteering and how to read a map, how to orient yourself on a map, and how to actually use the map to find a way back to civilization. So if you were going to go the paper map route, which I totally full-heartedly say you should, if you have the ability to do it, go to REI and take an orienteering class. Go to a wilderness survival school and take an orienteering class, or do an online one. Mm-hmm. Learn how to use it. It's not that hard if you know how to use it. If you know how to read peaks and know how to orient your compass with the nearest peaks to figure out exactly on that map where you're at, it's indispensable.
Yeah. And if you live in an area that, there is no REI or similar store, you can also, and where I got my maps, just go to usgs.gov, go to their online store. They have a tool. You put in your address and it'll show you all the, the grids of the different survey areas, and you can just select the ones you want and buy them, and they'll mail them to you. So, and I think you can also get them printed on waterproof paper, but that's going to cost a little bit more. So,
yeah. And if you don't know how to use them, it's another thing that you can use to start a fire. I mean,
true. Yep. Maybe we should talk about fires for a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've talked about candles and stuff. So, I really like your idea of keeping a candle with you, like a little beeswax candle or something. If somebody doesn't have that forethought and they find themselves out in the snow, is there a way that they can find something to burn, or are they just kind of out of luck?
There's always things to burn. Where I live, we don't have these cool, like, we don't have the Spanish moss that you get down south. We don't have tree moss that you get up north. We don't have like the lichen that we can dry out. But a lot of places, if you have pine trees, the lower branches of the pine trees actually kind of creates a snow block. And pine needles are extremely flammable.
Turpentine.
As you probably discovered, most young men go through a little bit of a pyro stage. I'm just going to make an assumption that if you are of the male gender and are listening to this, you have probably lit a pine needle on fire at some point in your life. That's a good place to look, underneath pine trees.
Yep, those orange ones, man.
Right.
Hot and fast. They burn hot and fast.
Which isn't necessarily good for drying things out to start fires, but it's something that you can use.
Yeah. So in my, I don't know, last couple of years, I've started watching a lot of these guys on YouTube that do like bushcraft type stuff is what they call it. And growing up where I didn't realize how coveted pine wood is. And apparently in other areas of the country and the world, they call it fat wood. It was always around when we were camping. So again, going back to the pine tree, it's the parts of the tree that are just really like sappy, almost like spongy, like it feels like you could almost squeeze sap out of it. Apparently that is very desirable for these bushcrafting survival guys because they can shave off little shavings of it, light it, and it burns super easily, and it burns for a long time. It burns very slowly. It's almost like nature's version of a candle, I guess. So in addition to the pine needles, that's one thing that I know that can be used in that situation.
Going to the shavings, one thing that I learned through the experience of building fires and whatnot, in the high country, you get a lot of bug-killed trees. In Colorado, Idaho, Utah, it's the beetle kills. And on the East Coast, it's probably a beetle. Let's be honest. Most beetles like going into the trees. They like boring into them. You got the emerald borer that does it. But a fallen tree that has been killed by a bug is going to have kind of a spongy inside, which if you can find one that's dry and crack that open, that stuff can catch a spark. That stuff will burn. That stuff. It's almost like a little sawdust cake that you get when you're learning how to use a bow and drill, which is another way to start a fire. At any type of survival skills training, like they kind of give you one of these and say, hey, catch your spark in this because this is easy. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to that, and it's very useful.
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing that when I was a young Boy Scout, I kind of assumed that if wood was wet, like if you found a log or branches or something that were wet, you couldn't use them. You had to find something else. But as I got a little bit more experience, I learned that's not necessarily the case. If you have a way to split a log, really it's only the outer like 10-20% that's, unless it's like sitting in a lake, it's only the outer 10 to 20% that's going to be wet. If you can split it open, the inside will be perfectly dry.
Yeah.
So,
As far as non-natural things that are flammable, dire circumstances, if you have a spare set of clothes, the back seat of your car, anything that's kind of fibrous that you can shred up, you can create a fire starter out of that as well.
yeah. If you've got a leaky car, scrape some of that oily residue off the bottom, combine it with whatever wood you do have on hand or around. One thing I will say is please don't try and siphon gas out of your gas tank to light a fire. At best, you'll aspirate some of the gas into your lungs, and at worst, you'll actually get gas out and try and build a fire and blow yourself up. Don't use gasoline for a fire. It's not. Go look it up on YouTube if you want to see what happens.
When I was in college, we went up into the mountains and created a bonfire, and one of my friends, I'll use the term friend loosely, but one of my friends brought up a canister of gasoline to start the fire because he didn't want to deal with starting it the right way, and so he dumped it on one side, lit the match, threw it on the gasoline. Then as he was walking with the gasoline can to the other side of the fire to start to do the same thing, the fire followed the fumes up into the tank. He freaked out, threw it middle of the forest. We could have started a lot. Luckily, me and another guy quickly grabbed a stick and grabbed the gas can and threw it on top of the fire and went, "Are you an idiot? Like, what are you doing?" But gasoline is very volatile. There's a reason why our cars use it to go forward. Don't use it.
No. Diesel fuel, maybe. But gasoline, gasoline doesn't burn. That stuff explodes. Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
And if you stumble upon this, I'm not going to say names. I apologize for throwing you under the bus on this one.
I'm sure in retrospect, he realizes the error of his ways.
Maybe. Before we go beyond fire, word of advice from me. Survival shows like on Discovery, on Nat Geo, on these things make it look like starting a fire is so easy. Bring a lighter with you.
Yes.
A friction fire is extremely difficult. It's even more difficult when you're shivering.
And when
flint
everything's
and steel.
Wet. Yep.
If you don't know how to catch a spark from flint and steel, having it in your survival pack is going to do absolutely nothing to help you survive. So if you're going to go the primitive fire starting methods, practice them. Start your fires in your backyard, or start a fire in a barbecue pit before you cook. Like, to learn how to use these skills before you have to rely on them in a survival situation, because you're not going to remember. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be panicking. You're not going to take the time to learn a new skill when you need the new skill. That's my last bit of advice for the fire starting.
No, it's good advice. Like, yeah. Primitive fire building is great. Lighters are even better. If you don't like lighters for some reason, get some stormproof matches. I have some. They're awesome. You can light them, stick them underwater, pull them out, and they relight.
Yeah.
So,
hurricane matches are awesome.
Yep.
There's long burn matches that uses a different type of wood than your normal pine, so that the match actually burns like a piece of wood rather than like a match. Those are very helpful. But Yeah. Now that we've talked about blowing ourselves up with gasoline and everything else, perhaps we should go into what to do if you get hurt.
Yeah. And, I mean, first aid for burns is pretty easy when it's snow out. Just stick it in the snow. But no, I'm just kidding. But obviously, the most common thing that people are potentially going to run into is frostbite. So I'll just hit on that really quick. With frostbite, there's not a whole lot that you can do once it's happened. And we're talking about first aid here, so we won't really go into prevention. I think that's fairly obvious. But if you find yourself with frostbite, wrap it up, keep it warm. Don't put it like right next to the fire. If your fingers are frostbitten, don't hold your hand right there. You're not going to be able to feel the heat, and you will burn yourself, guaranteed. Also, if you rewarm frostbitten flesh too quickly, you're going to cause more damage. So keep it as warm as possible. Put it next to your body, wrap it in, a coat or something until you can get back to civilization, and then warm it up slowly with like lukewarm water. And then the other thing with frostbite, don't rub it. So if you are out walking and you stop to pull your boot off and, dry out your socks, and you see that your toes are frostbitten, I know the urge is to rub your feet and your toes and warm them up. But if you do that, when you get frostbite, there's actual ice that forms in the cells in your appendages. And if you do that, you're basically, spearing the flesh with these little ice crystals, and you're going to cause a lot of damage and potentially have to amputate something. So keep it warm. Don't stick it in the fire, and get back to civilization as quick as you can is your best bet with frostbite.
I would like to let our listeners know that this is for like bad cases. Your ears will get red. That's not the type of frostbite we're talking about here. This is
right.
This is dangerous. You've lost feeling in an extremity type of frostbite.
Yeah, if you can feel it, it's, I forget what they call it, frost nip. Maybe
something like that. I can't
remember. Yeah, if you can feel it, it's not frostbite. Frostbite, it I don't know if, I've seen it before, but it turns black and it's like swollen and shiny. It's kind of gruesome looking.
Usually kind of goes gray before it goes black.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to burns. There's degrees to them. Yeah. I don't know if that's official, but there is degrees to them. But yeah. While we're talking about the cold, hypothermia, when your body starts to suck all the warmth out of the extremities to keep your core warm, it can be very dangerous. First sign of it is shivering. Eventually the shivering goes away. Then lethargy, and then eventually it can actually kill you. So what do we do for hypothermia?
Try and warm up.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, right? I mean, keep it simple. It's caused by the cold. You try and warm up. Don't sit, keep moving. You're going to feel tired. You're going to want to just lay down and go to sleep. But that'll be the last thing that you do, honestly.
If your clothes are wet, get them off of your skin.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you have a partner, like say you fell into a river, fell through the ice, if you're out there with a buddy, Boy Scouts teaches it, Girl Scouts teaches it, elementary schools in the United States teach it, the buddy system. Always be out in the wilderness with somebody if you can. They can help warm you up, skin to skin contact.
Mm-hmm.
Shed the wet clothes, share share your body warmth with the person that's affected. Blankets, even hot tea. And it doesn't have to be tea in the normal sense. It could be warm water with pine needles in it, but a warm drink will help move some of that heat from your core back to your extremities.
Yeah. Yep. Any way you can either, I mean, I look at it as you've got the problem that you're too cold, and you can either remedy that by stopping your heat loss or putting heat back in. Any way you can do that.
I think that's perfect. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep. And in a survival situation, yeah, our monkey brain takes over, so simple is better.
Yeah.
How about for our X Games skiers and snowboarders? Things like broken bones, sprained ankles. I know we both have recent experience with a sprained ankle, but I think you have a little bit more than I do.
I mean, the old adage, rice, rest it, ice it, elevate it. Like, so rice is rest, ice, compression, elevation. That's for sprain. The goal is to immobilize the inflamed ligaments, the inflamed tendons, the inflamed muscles as much as possible to avoid further damage, because usually a sprain or a strain is a stretching of the ligaments, and it creates instability in a joint. Most likely your ankle. That tends to be the most common joint on us bipedal folks. But you can sprain your wrist, you can sprain your elbow. Like, any joint is susceptible to it, and it's just a stretching of the ligaments. If you have an ace bandage or a cloth bandage, put some compression on it. If you're in the woods, unfortunately, it's hard to walk on it. Don't. A lot of people who end up dying in a survival situation is because they wandered from where they were last known. If you can't walk on it, don't walk on it. Same goes for broken bones. As long as the bone's not punctured through the skin, wrap above and below it. If it's going through the skin, wrap above and below it. There's a little bit more gnarliness when it comes to a compound fracture, but yeah, just immobilize the joint, put some compression on it, and try not to use it.
Yeah, you're not hiking out, 10, 15, 20 miles even just on a sprained ankle. So I would echo what you said about staying put, with the caveat that assuming that where you are is safe. I mean, if you fall into a river and sprain your ankle landing, don't stay in the river. Crawl out of the river, but within reason. I mean, yeah.
It goes back to the law of three, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a river, get out of the river. Oxygen's more important. If you're out in the open, find a place where you can not be in the open.
Yeah, it all comes back to the basics. So I think that's first aid pretty well covered. Obviously, I mean, like we kind of alluded to, keep a first aid kit with you. Things to put in your first aid kit. I think in mine, let's see, what do I have? Band-Aids in different sizes, some gauze, alcohol wipes for disinfecting things, Neosporin or bacitracin. Bacitracin's better. I carry an EpiPen because I have some allergies that I need that for potentially. So that's in my first aid kit. Also, I keep some basic medications in there, ibuprofen, Tylenol, some antihistamine like Benadryl. What else do I have? I have some moleskin, which is really good for blisters. You can just buy that at the pharmacy. And I also carry a couple other things that you probably don't need to worry about. I have some like quick clot stuff that you can dump in a wound. I carry a tourniquet and things like that. If you are interested in getting trained on how to use those things, do that and then put them in your first aid kit. But if you're not trained on how to use them, you'll probably cause more damage than you save. But yeah, they're good to have and there's online training. So if that's something you're interested in, go for it. I don't know. Am I missing anything on first aid kit items?
Not that I know of. I on top of everything that you have, I usually keep a pair of scissors.
Yep.
And I think you said an ace bandage or a cloth bandage of some sort.
I didn't, but I do have a couple of those.
And I definitely keep butterfly bandages, which isn't your normal Band-Aid or like gauze type of bandage. It's one that in a bind can kind of replicate stitches.
Yep, those are good to have.
Other than that, I also have a trauma kit that I carry with me if I'm going deep into the backcountry.
Yeah.
That has similar stuff to what Adam had. This one has the congealing. It's got a bunch of stuff to help from anything from a lacerated artery to a gunshot wound. So, but
yep.
As Adam said, if you don't know how to use that stuff, don't carry it.
All right. So first aid done and dusted. Food, I think we have not talked about yet.
Yeah, I think that's the last thing because we talked about water.
Okay.
To an extent.
So, Steve, when you go out picking daisies or whatever you do, what kind of food do you take?
Well, not a lot of daisies grow in the winter. It depends. In my day pack, it's a pack of like a trail mix. It's chocolate, it's nuts, it's peanuts, it's crackers. Just in case, I usually have a can or two of tuna because that's relatively light and it's a protein source just in case I get stranded.
You do the actual cans or do you do those like pre-made foil packs?
It depends. The pre-made foil packs are great, but the cans also serve a great purpose. They can be used to melt snow.
That's a good point. I did not think about that.
So it depends on the season. I don't want that extra weight when I'm hiking in the summer, but since we're talking about the winter, I prefer the cans.
Yeah.
If I'm going backpacking, which I usually don't do in the cold, I'm not a big fan of winter camping. It's dehydrated meals all the way.
Oh, gotta love the MREs.
Yeah. Well, I do the more expensive, like backpacking meals.
Oh, like I'm trying to think what the big brand is that does that. It's not Mountain House. That's the like prepper 5-gallon bucket ones. I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah. So what about you? What do you do for food?
Personally, I'm a fan of Cliff Bars. Whenever I go out hunting, I just throw a couple in there. I don't like, so I guess it depends. If I'm out just hiking with family and friends, just kind of leisurely, then I'm all about food actually tasting good. So I'll do the tuna pouches. Tortillas are great because you can make a sandwich without having to worry about them getting squished. And then, like you said, trail mix. So in general, you want like fatty foods as opposed to like carbs. So fats and protein would be good. Fats have twice as many calories per gram. But then when I go hunting, I don't like to create a lot of extra trash. I don't like to take up a lot of extra room. So I'll just throw a few Cliff Bars in my pack. And I mean, a Cliff Bar is the size of a deck of cards, weighs a little bit less than that, but it's 250 calories.
Mm-hmm.
And they taste good. I love the chocolate chip ones and the peanut butter ones. And actually, what's the other one? It's a blueberry muffin. I'm pretty sure that's it. They have like a blueberry muffin or a blueberry scone one that's also really good. But they're quick and easy. You can use the wrapper to start a fire if you need to. They're light. They don't take up any space.
I keep forgetting about Cliff Bars.
Those four of them, and that's your calories for the day. Maybe 5 or 6 if you're doing really intense hiking.
Yeah. Man. Perfect.
I buy them by the case on Amazon. And actually, that's another thing I keep in my truck. I always have a case of water bottles and a case of Cliff Bars. So.
All right. Anything to add to your winter survival kit?
One other thing that I didn't get a chance to throw in the notes, but I wanted to cover really quickly, just because I've actually known some people personally that were affected. So with unexpected winter storms, and especially like what happened last winter in Texas, it's not uncommon and it's not outside the realm of possibility that somebody could be stranded in their home for several days or a week or more because of winter weather and possibly without power. So I just wanted to, I guess, throw out a few quick tips there. And then I'm sure you'll have some great input as well. But I would throw out food storage, would be food and water storage. I'm going to combine those. You should have, so the average American has 3 days or less of stored food in their house, which would be fine, except they have even less water. You need at least 1 gallon per person per day. And if you have pets, you need water for them. So you need to have water stored up. The easiest way is just to buy cases of bottled water. It's terrible for the environment with all the microplastics and stuff, but it's, better than dying of thirst. So when you go shopping, just throw a couple of those in your cart. You can also do what I did, which is spring for the 55-gallon blue, like food safe water barrels. Those store great in a garage. Just keep them up off of the concrete so stuff doesn't leach in. Throw a cap full of bleach in. You'll be good for, a couple of years. Rotate it when you can. And then with food storage, canned goods, ramen, rice is great. Dried beans are great. Dried beans will keep for decades, especially if you take them out of the bag and stick them in a canning jar with like a little desiccant pack, a food safe desiccant pack. But yeah, food storage, stuff that you can cook without electricity, because like I said, we saw it last year. There was thousands of people that went through it down in Texas.
I have nothing to add. I need to be better of that. I think I think I have 4 days worth of food and maybe a day worth of water.
Yeah.
And people will always say, oh, hurricanes, you can fill a bathtub. You're not going to drink where you stand. And even if you did, what are the chances? I mean, if the power's out, there's a good chance that the city's municipal power is out too, and that means you might be getting untreated water into it. It's better to plan ahead. So, yeah, I think that's a wrap. I think we have officially survived the blizzard of 2022. Since 2021 is not going to have any snow.
For the mindfulness moment for this week's show, I was able to find something that ties in pretty well. We're going back to the Havamal this week. This is stanza 60. And it says, of seasoned shingles and strips of bark, for the thatch let one know his need, and how much of wood he must have for a month, or in half a year he will use. And I take this as just basically saying it's wise to be prepared. You know, you need to know what you're going to need. You need to have stores stored up for, some time so that you can make it through the winter, make it through crazy storms, make it through whatever might come, right? And I know we focused on winter survival, but it applies for everything. Have some money in the bank. We live in uncertain economic times, and you never know when you're going to have to change jobs or move to a new place. Just try and live within your means and set some stuff aside, both money and food and everything.
Yeah. Almir, as you were reading that, I was kind of thinking it kind of talks a lot about knowing what you have and preparing for the future. And I know you kind of hinted at that, but it goes for food storage, like you were talking about. It goes for water storage. It goes for being prepared for what you may or may not know. I think that's important in a survival situation, in a living situation, in your day-to-day, just being just a little bit prepared for the future. You don't have to go full on prepper, but just being aware of what you need is an important skill to have.
Agreed.
Well, I guess that ends this episode. You can join us next week as we look at some end-of-the-year holiday customs from around the world. For example, do you know that there's a country that a Christmas cat will crawl down out of the mountains to eat you if you don't wear your sweater that you get for Christmas? Or a giant evil being that comes and terrorizes the naughty kids rather than giving them coal? Join us next week as we discover some of the stranger customs around the world. Bye. Do you have a request for a subject that you'd like us to talk about on a future episode? Or is there a particular topic for which you have a passion and you'd love to come on the show as a guest? Either way, send an email to podcast@viewsfromtheworldtree.com or message us through one of our social media accounts, the links to which can be found on our new website, viewsfromtheworldtree.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you have a moment, we would appreciate it if you leave us a rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. It makes a huge difference, especially for new podcasts.